Good afternoon again. Welcome everyone to this first telematic meeting for DR holders of Triodos Spain. First of all, I would like to wish you the best. I hope you are all fine and your dear ones. And I would like to send my condolences to those that have lost a relative. We are in not normal circumstances, but this is becoming the common way of holding meetings in the last few months. And although being face to face and seeing each other is very nice, this format is also very nice because you can be connected to many people in different points and different areas of the world. Thank you very much all for being here. I have some colleagues from the bank on my side, and they are at a certain distance from us, and they are here to accompany us so that this is not empty. But most of you are connected. You are DR holders, depository receipt holders, and we wanted to devote all the time to you this year because we wanted to answer some of your questions, doubts, and remarks that you may have, and your concerns and anxieties. Some of them perhaps have already been sent to us in the registration, and this is really very something to be thankful for because it is going to make things much easier. For those of you that join us for the first time, I'm going to explain what the meaning of this event is. You will have received through post or email the call for the annual shareholders meetings. It is going to be held in the Netherlands, and you can connect because it is also going to be telematic. But we want always to have a brief encounter first in order to bring you closer to the results of the bank in the last year. And this is an answer to our policy and our intention to offer transparency, but also to promote and to develop conversation and exchange among all that are a part of this bank and that believe in the purpose of this bank, which is becoming more important than ever with these circumstances. This is a special year for many different reasons, but also for some good reasons. In 2020, Triodos Bank is turning 40 years old in Europe. We turn 15 years old in Spain next year. And this is thanks to your savings and to your investments. 4 decades after the foundation, ethical banking is not a weird concept anymore. And in these complex times that we are going through and unexpected, there are many other voices in politics, in society, in economy that are claiming that economy and finance should be at the service of the people and at the service of the life in the planet. But this is a concept that is good to speak about, but we have to put it to practice. And that's what we have been doing for 4 decades. In spite of the physical distance, this meeting wants to or intends to bring us all closer and to feel part of a common project. And the holders play a very important role there. I'm going to make a brief summary of the agenda for today. This year again we have with us Peter Blom. He is at the other side of the camera in the Netherlands, and he is going to offer a brief analysis and an overview of the group as a whole and Triodos Bank in Europe. Then Miquel García Prieto, who is the general manager of Triodos Bank in Spain, will provide an overview from the point of view of the Spanish branch in particular. And then we will have quite a time for a dialogue, for an exchange, for Q&A sessions, and we will try to answer the questions that you have already sent in the preliminary stages, and also those that are sent in real time. As you have seen, before we go to the speeches themselves, as you have seen at the start of the session, you have a service of simultaneous interpreting if you want to listen to the Spanish translation of Peter's presentation, which will be delivered in English, and also you can ask your questions through the chat. Anyway, I will explain that later on. You have a chat on the screen, and you see that you can ask questions there. That's all on my part. Thank you very much for attending. And we are going to start with Peter presentations, then Mikkel's one, and then the Q&A session. Peter?
Okay, thank you, Aurora. Thank you all for embracing this new way of being in conversation with each other. Normally you enjoy very much a face-to-face get-together with plenty of opportunity for informal connection. Today will be different. but I welcome the opportunity to talk to you about a few things happening in Triodos Bank. First of all, I want to inform you about the 2019 results. It seems like many years ago, but it's not. It's only half a year ago, and we would like to share with you what we have done in 2019. Secondly, and that is expected, I assume, is I want to give you our view on Corona and the actions we've taken so far. And thirdly, more specifically, we want to talk with USDR holders and talk about the measures we take and the letter you have received to elaborate a little bit more on that, so make you better understand what is behind these decisions. I will try to give you all of a snapshot of what the daily reality is in the banking sector across the different countries where we are active. I will also share some of the ideas we have more broadly for what governments and businesses can do to aid the immediate needs of people and business, but also in building a new economy, more resilient, more sustainable, more fair. A crisis is always also an opportunity to make things better in a much shorter time frame. When the crisis hit European countries, I'm well aware that Spain was one of the countries affected first and most dramatically. Many of you have suffered losses in your family and in your immediate circle, and my sympathies are with you in these challenging times. As the pandemic spread and each government announced increasing measures restricting freedom of movement, our first focus was on the health of our co-workers and on being able to guarantee continuity of our systems so customers can continue to use our services and reach us in the way they are used to. In every country, we obviously observe the measures announced by the local health authorities to limit the risks to our co-workers, our customers, and society. We work from home as much as possible. More than 80% of our co-workers are working from home across 5 countries. We have split critical operations in different teams who work at different locations. Where necessary, we no longer travel internationally for work, and we avoid face-to-face meetings and events. Quite a new situation, but we work with it quite well. Very proud of the co-workers, how they immediately took this as a challenge and worked it out quite well. Triodos is committed to facing the challenge of the crisis and will do its utmost to support customers. With other banks, we are closely working together with governments and regulators. For example, the European Central Bank and the national central banks have made it possible to use some of the buffers, freeing up capital to provide credit. The support measures taken by the different governments vary, but everywhere large amounts of money have been made available to support income or debt of entrepreneurs and citizens. The corona crisis exposes also structural weaknesses in the contemporary global socio-economic system. Climate change, global loss of biodiversity, and deforestation fundamentally change the global ecosystem. But different from the past, the climate challenge goes hand in hand with social inclusion questions. A transition by everyone and with benefits for everyone is key after Corona. Triodos Bank itself is part of the new economy. The struggles, but also the potential of our customers is likely to influence also our own business. How big or long-lasting this effect will be is impossible to predict at this stage. The good news is that Triodos has a strong capital position, a significant buffer above the minimal capital requirements. Nevertheless, we are closely monitoring the further developments. And I go to slide 4. Triodos Bank in 2019. So let's take a brief look at how Triodos did in 2019. First of all, you see in slide 5, change finance and finance change. That has been an important motto for Triodos Bank in the past 40 years. We wanted to finance change, but we also wanted to change finance, change the system. And those 2 pillars of our strategy, I will want to come back on. First of all, on slide 6, finance change. finance all those projects, all those businesses who really want to contribute to a different world, and where Triodos is their banking partner. And we do that according to the lines of 3 strategic themes: energy and climate, food and agriculture, and social inclusion. First, slide 7, energy and climate. Triodos has currently 504 sustainable energy projects in its portfolio, mainly wind and solar products, but also other items such as hydropower installations. This provides 4.6 million households with clean energy. Also in 2019, Triodos was the largest financer of renewable energy projects in Europe, measured in numbers of deals, not in volume, fully in line with our front-runner role. Then I will go to the next one, food and agriculture, slide 8. Triodos has funded 34,000 hectares of organic farmland in various parts of Europe by the end of 2019. This enabled, if you calculate that through, 31 million organic meals to be served to people. Organic farming is one of the key elements also in the European Commission strategy, and we are aligned with it. We really hope there can be a breakthrough for organic farming. We also launched a new initiative in this sector in 2019, a way to enable private clients in the Netherlands, for example, to invest in agricultural land in order to pull it out of the speculative market and make it available to sustainable farmers. Then the third strategic sector, social inclusion. Triodos investment management funds were in 2019 investing in 109 microfinance institutions in 45 countries around the world. In turn, these institutions were able to provide 19.1 million customers to take initiatives and enable 90.2 people a safe place to deposit their money. An activity we have been very active in the last 20-25 years and is really maturing at the moment. Then I go to the numbers, slide 10, the key figures. As you can see under these key figures, we had quite a nice growth in 2019 of our total asset under management. And what I mean by that, I will come to the next slide. Total loans was growing, and total loans means more impact, and even also net profit was growing in 2019. Still, with a stable capital base, our common equity tier ratio, the capital ratio of a bank, grew from 70.5 to 70.9%, a very solid capital ratio. So how are, on slide 11, the assets divided? You can see the different ones there, the different branches, and also investment management. You see that we have quite a nice spread over the countries, and that every country contributes to the growth of the bank. If I go to slide 12, to give you a little bit more perspective on customers and co-workers, you can see that we did grow in the number of customers in 2019, but also co-workers and DR holders. There were also almost 2,000 more DR holders coming into Triodos and to support us in our growth. And that's a good bridge to talk a little bit more in depth about the DR holders, you who have supported us for such a long time. You are invested in the core capital of the bank. Thanks to your investment, we can apply 10 times the amount of savings to lend to projects and sustainable businesses in realizing their mission. In that sense, your investment is a real impact multiplier. You multiply 10 times with your investment what we can do for the sector. But on the other side, being an investor in Triodos, you're also feeling the consequences when times are challenging, like they are now. The capital is an important and first buffer for a bank in difficult situations like now. And that brings me to the recent measures we had to take in reaction to the corona crisis. We have had 2 decisions that affect you very immediately. One is the decision to suspend trade of the DRs, and the second was the decision to follow the urgent advice from the European Central Bank not to distribute dividends. The impact of at least one of these decisions has been felt by many of you, and we fully recognize that fact and working hard on the solutions. How do the solutions look like, we hope? We are expecting to be able to reopen trade as soon as possible, but after publishing our half-year results on the 21st of August, with hopefully a perspective on a balanced in and outflow. That's important if you reopen trade. And regarding dividend, our business as usual approach remains unchanged. We continue to aim for a reasonable profit and to distribute a share of this profit as dividend, as we have done, by the way, for the past 33 years. Of course, I cannot give you guarantees. As well, we have to see how the economy develops in the coming months. And you can be sure of that. We will update you regularly on that, so you're well aware of what the next step is of the bank. Last but not least, we hope you will consider an additional investment after reading the prospectus and taking note of our half-year results. 21st of August is the moment to have a look at that. Then I move to slide 13, to the change finance initiatives. One very good example was the COP25 in Madrid in Spain, where there was a sector-broad commitment from the Spanish bank initiated by Triodos Spain. Very good initiative. Let me end with slide 14 with change finance and finance change in their relation, and give me use our strategic perspective. I strongly believe that the corona crisis is not only a serious threat to people's health and our social economic wealth, it's also an opportunity for a reset of the economy, making it more sustainable and making it fairer. Reconnecting finance and the real economy and rebalancing social, ecological and economic values are crucial for the recovery and the journey to a more resilient system, where globalization supports inclusion and resilience rather than weakening it. It seems to do now. Triodos and the projects and businesses we finance have been pioneers and frontrunners in the field. What we have learned, our insights, will be shared and enriched by the experiences of others. But we are very well positioned to make a significant step forward and to be a key player in this reset of the economy. Because what is at stake? We need to rebalance social, ecological and economic values to ensure the promotion of broad welfare and social inclusion. The resilient economy of the future is based on stakeholder business models, something Triodos has a lot of experience with. This must be the leading model of the economic development, respecting mutual dependence in good and bad times and being connected to the communities they serve. With your support, we can fulfill a front-running role in this change. In redefining our theory of change because of Corona, in redesigning our strategy for transformation, much more agile, much more in scaling up our presence, and in recreating the way we want to realize impact, needed more than ever. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. And good afternoon, everyone. It is really a source of joy for me to be able to share these moments with you, to talk about how these difficult and strange times are looking like for the activity of Triodos in Spain. I would like to join Aurora and Peter in sending our condolences to those that have suffered losses in the families. These have been difficult times for everyone, but we have to stand up and restart our activity. And now I would like to speak about the opportunity that we have right now at Triodos to look into the future with trust and confidence and believe that things can be different from now on. Aurora was mentioning about the difficulties of this new format with technology in between. Sometimes I know that it is too cold compared to the warmth of our normal encounters. But now in Spain we have the opportunity to have people that cannot normally attend this event, and they can now share and join us, and we should take advantage of that opportunity. I trust that with all that we can convey to you what we are doing and the value that we believe it has in these difficult circumstances. It is important you, with your decision to become DR holders, are keeping up Triodos Bank as an independent organization. We now can be faithful and loyal to our mission and our purpose, and to continue growing and developing. I would like beforehand to send my recognition and our recognition to you, because you play a very important role in this bank. I would also like to acknowledge and recognize each and every one of the co-workers in the bank, and the extraordinary reaction that you have had in such difficult circumstances, everyone with their own personal circumstances, but that has made possible from your availability and your commitment to provide continuity to the activity of the bank without inconveniences, and every customer of the bank has been able to have access to an essential service like accessing their money and their resources. I would like to point out that nobody at the bank has had any serious condition, health condition. And last but not least, I would also like to recognize all those customers and social entrepreneurs that with their courage are assuming this slowdown in activity, and they are keeping up their commitment of being of service to others, to the holders, the people that work at the bank, the customers, and the social entrepreneurs. We all are together in our purpose of creating a society that is more fair for everyone. Each from their own role have a shared and a mutual recognition of the value that we contribute, and that is one of the essential pillars of the bank and one of the fundamental elements that make us trust in the future of the bank, that we will navigate for sure very safely. We believe that these are important times. Peter has told us how we reacted to this situation. I wanted to add some nuances and details about how we have tackled that in Spain. The first weeks at the bank, we made our best effort to take care of people, of co-workers, and provide continuity to our activity, with 90% of the people working from home, keeping the bank open and the service running with minimum services with an appointment to be able to come to the offices, but without any incident in the operations of the bank, thanks to the commitment of the people, each with their own circumstances from home. We also immediately started to work in order to accompany our customers in the face of this radical slowdown of activity with our own services, but also hand in hand with the collaboration of institutions and with the credit guarantee systems of the state. We have started to work to provide liquidity to our customers through ICO, or in collaboration with ICO. We have financed in 2.5 months around 70 million euros and more than 400 initiatives. And likewise, from the Ministry of Culture and CREA, which is a mutual guarantee society, they contacted Triodos in order to create and develop a liquidity funding facility for the cultural sector, because they didn't have access to the ICO. And we were the first bank, the first institution to join that scheme, and we are very proud of that. We are developing a very helpful activity there as well. Of course, we adhere to the moratorium and the stay on mortgages according to the regulations of the bank and also of the banking sector. and all that funding with difficult and complex decisions, with the real tension between the need to satisfy the needs, liquidity needs of our customers, and also the prudence necessary not to become over-indebted that could perhaps turn to our contrary in the future. Funding operations, moratoriums of mortgages for families, but also funding and operations that are more complex, like, for example, or more urgent, like, for example, the import of masks on ventilators. Additionally to that, we launched an initiative with national money. So from our platform, crowdfunding platform, we offer it to all those initiatives that needed to reinvent themselves in crisis times. For example, we have an example which is Somos la Leche. This is an initiative of a social inclusion company that has been collecting excess production of dairy products of the ecological farmers that could not distribute their products because of the closure of the restaurants, and they have made cheese, ecologic cheese, with them, keeping up the production of the cattle raisers and creating jobs for people in need. And also, as Peter said, we had difficult decisions to make, but prudent decisions, like, for example, suspending trading of depository receipts that Peter mentioned already. It seems far away already, but it is part of our day-to-day activity to review our results in 2019. Last year, this time of the year, we were saying that 2018 had been a year where ecological transition had arrived in Spain. In 2019, that transition has started to cascade down through the sectors, and we can say that also in the financial sector, where the activity of sustainable finance has arrived and is here now to stay. And in this context, in this positive context of sustainable finance, the development of the bank has been extraordinarily positive. We have funded more than 375 million euros in 2019, in line with 2018. Although it is also true that we had greater degrees of reimbursement of amortizations, early reimbursement, because some customers had sold their projects to big investors, mainly in the renewable energy sector. So not all the activity that we funded has become growth, but it is also a sign of health and of the nice situation of the sectors that we are funding. Through syndication mechanisms, we are now prepared to cater for the needs of big infrastructures of renewable energies in this country, which is the future now. As you can see in the figures, the entrusted funds entrusted, the savings of the customers have been stable, and they are enough to be able to finance all the activity that I have just been talking about. And the profit for 2019, those 4.2 million euros, is a result that is substantially better than in previous years, but it requires still an improvement of efficiency in Spain in order to be able to absorb the high regulatory costs and investments in digitalization. Regarding customers, the entry of new customers in the bank is very significant, with more than 10,000 new customers in the bank, and that's something that we welcome. But there is also a similar figure of customers that left the institution because they were not making use of the bank, or perhaps because they didn't agree with our fee policy. As regards the people working at the bank, as you can also see, there is stability, there is no decrease, there is even a slight increase of the number of people that are working at the bank right now. But I think that this year is especially important to delve deeper into this slide, our loan portfolio, our funding portfolio, from two main perspectives. One, transparency. We have learned, especially in these last few months, that it is indispensable to know where our resources are being invested, and that the investments have an impact, and that might lead to one or the other future. Transparency is an essential requirement, and it is not admissible any longer to have a financial sector that we do not know where the destination of resources is. We know even the generation mix in the energy sector of each of the suppliers and of our own bill. We can know where our energy is coming from. Now we should know what the destination, what the target is of the funds that we deposit in the banking institutions. It is exactly the same. And the other essential element in this snapshot is the target of funds towards a real economy, toward the planet and the people. You see in the figures and the percentages that it is not necessarily true that those sectors present are not the most profitable, but the ones that make up the biggest part of our investment portfolio are those sectors that we consider are more necessary from a social perspective and more profitable from a social perspective. So health, culture, or education are clear examples and are a reflection of our principles. All that with the low delinquency level, very low, 1.84% of default. This is our comes to show our commitment with society in order to face the new challenging times. Peter was saying that finance was changing and that we needed to change finance, and apart from funding change, we needed to change finance. And there were important steps that were taken in the financial sector in Spain up until 2018. Up until 2018, we didn't want to discuss the impact and the responsibility of financial sectors in the impact. The impact was a responsibility of the productive sectors. If there was contamination or pollution, that was up to the sectors, but the financial sector was just funding. It had nothing to do with us. But through 2019, we have fortunately taken a step forward, and we have decided that the final decision to fund or not a productive sector is also a decision of the financial institutions. And when you decide to fund one company, you are becoming co-responsible of the impact that that company has. Not only co-responsible for funding it, but also you have a co-responsibility as a fiduciary. You are not funding that with your own resources, but with the resources of your customers. And so they should demand that the bank is well informed and is transparent with the customers as regards how we are using your money. So the commitment of the Spanish banking sector with the transparency at the COP25, 85% of the Spanish banking sector committed to disclosing their impact in the next 3 years and to set the goals to align to the Paris Agreement by 2030. It is not the perfect solution, but it is at least an important step forward in the recognition of the role that the financial sector has in the ecological transition and the role that we have played from Triodos in order to promote that agreement was an important role that we feel very proud of. This path, we hope we can continue developing in 2020. The regulatory developments in 2020, mainly the climate change legislation, will start to supplement and probably accelerate the change that is necessary in the financial sector. This year, 2020, we will continue to work in order to improve the service. 1 month ago, we launched the Correos Cash service in order to improve our cash services, making it possible to have cash available in the more than 2,300 offices that we have all over the Spanish territory. On top of that, we continue to work on digitalization in order to make our service more and more accessible to everyone and more comfortable to use. And yes, at last, in the last quarter of this year, we will launch the investment funds. After a regulatory marathon, in this year we will be ready to put our investment funds at the service of our customers. We believe this is an important step in order to increase our impact on transition and be able to influence the listed companies. Also a step which is important in order to improve our service proposition to our customers so that they have more variety and diversity, and also an important step for the bank in order to diversify our activity. We will continue to work in order to increase our impact, growing in financing and growing also trying to accompany our customers, because we are aware that this crisis we are in is not just for this year. Next year we will continue to apply rigor and be close to our customers in order to accompany them in those times of transition and recovery. But we will continue to emphasize transition, financing the renewable sector, not just the big plants, but also self-consumption. The topics that Peter has mentioned about ecological and organic agriculture, not just financing that production that we export to the rest of Europe. We are the first producer of organic product in Europe, but also we want to finance distribution and agriculture and food and agricultural projects in the local areas. In order to do that, we know that it is not enough to finance and to offer loans and credit. We need to develop all the types of monies like donations and capital in order to be more efficient in that transition. In that sense, we will continue to develop our crowdfunding platform, and we will continue to invest in capital through our own funds and also through third-party funds like the impact fund of the Bolsa Social. We will have to do that in a complex situation, in a complex context, with a challenge that the short term can prevent us from seeing or from taking the necessary step to develop also the sustainable mid-term. On our part, we will continue to do as we have done in the last 40 years, doing and leading by example and integrating action into our discourse, as you have done as DR holders. They are a signal of change, and they come to show that everything is possible, and we hope that we will continue to have your trust in the future. Thank you very much. Well, now we will continue with a discussion. Thank you very much, of course, the both of you for your presentations. We are fine in terms of the time. It seems as though we had rehearsed this. But as I was saying, we are going to start with this discussion, with this round table. We will start with the Q&A, with the questions that you sent beforehand. And there were many questions that were repeated, and we have gathered them into 4 main groups that mainly answer all the questions that were sent. The first one was about trading and operations of the DRs. I think that Peter has answered most of the questions in his presentation, but there were some questions that were more personal or more specific in the cases that they discussed. So we encourage you to send them to us at this address, relacionconinversores@triodos.es, and they will answer more in detail to your specific need or a specific doubt. The second group of questions was quite general in nature, and it had to do with the impact of the COVID-19 crisis and its economic consequences, and the impact on the present situation and also on the future of the bank. I'm going to address it first to Peter so that he can answer from a global perspective, from a European perspective or group perspective, and then you can also supplement it with specific considerations about the Spanish situations, because there were many reports that were negatives about the economic prospects of our country. Peter, can you answer first, please? Peter, we cannot hear you right now. I don't know why. Just wait a second and we will check. If you like, while Peter is connecting, I can perhaps answer my own part, although mine is more bottom-up in the approach, but I can speak about the situation in Spain. I believe that there is no single answer. I think that the reaction in the short term, in order to solve those liquidity needs, the reaction is being very effective, and we have been able to help sectors continue with their activities in the day-to-day. So in the short term, the reaction has been quite good, and that's something we have to keep monitoring to see how it develops next year. But this is not as a short-term measure. It should also be a measure for the next year, where we will have to generate new solutions for the development of the situation. Secondly, I think it is important to differentiate by sectors. In Spain, in particular, we have seen sectors that have continued their activity quite strongly, for example, renewable energies or food production, those essential services that were kept and that continued very strongly. And perhaps some other sectors like culture or tourism have suffered a lot more. And in that sense, the speed of recovery of those sectors that have been affected more will also be an important factor. The more it takes to recover, the more measures will be needed to recover, really. But if they recover very fast, we won't need any more measures. But then at micro level, in terms of initiatives, I think that those organizations that have fewer resources to be able to manage that transition, the longer recovery takes, the more they will suffer. So there is a difference between sectors. The time of recovery will be essential in order to determine the impact that it will have. So we cannot be very specific. No, I know it is not easy. I think that now Peter can answer. He was answering, but we didn't hear him. Peter, you have the floor.
Okay. Yeah, the question was, does it affect the bank, this crisis, and in what way? I think I can only align with Mikel that it's very clear that it's different per sector. And we believe that certain sectors are also within Triodos as more affected than others. But longer term, we believe the sectors we are financing are actually on the right side of the development of the future. More focused on sustainability, more focused on the real economy. So that's the longer perspective, and we believe that's positive. Short term, there is of course a challenge for many companies, and we help them as good as we can. And the good news is that Triodos Bank has good buffers and is able to help them through 2020, 21, and maybe beyond, and see how they can find their new stable place again in the future. This is all only when if there is a relatively fast and good recovery. If that's not the case, we really have to see how the whole economy will deal with it, including ourselves.
Thank you. I forgot something before. We spoke a lot about financing, but in the short term, we are also seeing an increase of savings. There is a predisposition to save more in order, I guess, to be prepared for whatever comes. Yeah, another important group of questions had to do with the new developments in goods and services for the next few months in Spain. This question is for you, Mikel, and about goods and services. I can perhaps list them one by one, and if you don't remember, I will remind it. They ask about new saving products, about the possibility to extend the investment product catalog. You said something about that in your presentation. Also about the possibility to open up new branches or contact points in territories where we are not present right now. They also ask about what products would you recommend to invest and diversify investment. They also ask about the relationship with blockchain technology and the interest that the bank might have in order to develop applications with that technology. And also in line with technology, there are many questions about the digital payment systems and methods. They mentioned Visum several times, and they ask when and which ones. Yeah, that's a lot of things. If I forget some of them, please remind me. First, regarding the saving products, as you all know, the interest rates of the European Central Bank are still negative of minus 0.5%, and with the prospect to be maintained for some time. So we do not have any forecast or any intention to develop additional saving products. But on the other hand, we believe that the new proposal of investment products is something that was very much necessary up to now, so that the customers of Triodos and the people that are anxious about their investments be able to have an alternative that is not available right now in the Spanish financial system. So I guess that we will focus more on the investment funds, not so much on saving products. And regarding new branches or offices, right now our main focus, as I said in my presentation, is digitalization, really. We believe that our way to reach our customers better and further is through a good development of our digital channel and to have a network of branches and offices that allows us to have a national coverage that is reasonably good. Thirdly, you ask about where to invest, I guess. You can imagine that that's something I cannot answer. I cannot answer directly, but I do believe that it is a good time, a good moment, but before making an investment, to ask yourself several times about the impact and the risk and the profitability, about how to balance, how to strike a balance between those three elements in our decision. It is not a time to make decisions without thinking about the impact. I think that's a piece of information that we have to demand. And on the other hand, I also believe that you have to know what your risk position is and have a balance of the risks that you are able to assume in the present context. So please think thoroughly about how to balance those three elements according to your risk appetite. Blockchain was the next. Blockchain and technology. Okay. Our purpose, our goal, and what the reason we are all here together is to maximize our impact, and that's where we are focusing right now and where we are making our best efforts. Our main focus is there, as you have seen throughout the presentation. We understand that, or we always look for technology to be at the service of our impact, of our goals. And of course, last year we were already looking into blockchain and other technologies to see whether we could find a technology to increase materially our impact. And at this point in time, I can say that we haven't found a tool that can be useful and that is accessible for a bank such as ours and with our investment capacity. But we will continue to follow up and to monitor closely every technology, because I think that in a short period of time we will be able to apply that type of technology. And then regarding payment methods, payment systems, I would say more or less the same. The goal is to offer our customers the possibility to have responsibility about where their money is invested, and to have a positive impact in cultural terms or in ecological terms or whatever. We know that with mobile banking there are lots of tools to make all necessary payments in quite a reasonable way. We monitor those technological developments quite closely, Visum and some others, all sorts of digital payment systems, but right now most of them only cover just a part of the payments that you can make. Visum is only for private, for individuals, not for companies. And we are waiting for a consolidation of those payment systems and to be able to be used by wider groups of companies and people, and then we will join that. Okay, the next group of questions that we were sent had to do, and they are also for you, they had to do with the financing of specific sectors. More in particular about three: financing of research and education, then financing of transport electrification and sustainable mobility, with the regulations that are coming from Europe, and then lots of questions about our plans to invest in the cultural sector as a whole, since it is one of the most hardly hit sectors. I can answer perhaps the Spanish question, but do you, Peter, do you want to give the international overview first?
Well, I can give you the overview as I gave in my introduction, that we have three key sectors we are looking at, and they're quite interconnected. The whole climate and energy question is maturing very rapidly, and we feel our specific contribution can be in making it more a community-based activity, because the big wind farms, the big solar plants, that will happen anyway. Other banks will help with that. But having new forms of generating power by people, I think that's where really Triodos can contribute. And as I said, we are the largest player in numbers in Europe on that. Closely connected to that, and I think we can do more, is agriculture and food. Also in Spain, an important sector, but Michael can tell you more about it. Why is that such an important area? I think it really has to change in Europe with agriculture. It's poisonous at the moment. It's a lot of CO2 emissions, and there is a nitrogen accession. And I feel that if we do not deal with agriculture in the right way in Europe, we really create big problems for health and for society. So we have to address that more rapidly. And for Triodos, that's a real challenge, how to do that. We are focusing on that. And last but not least, social inclusion applies to all sectors, I would say. It's not just a sector in itself. And you see, there is a real uprise in the world for social justice. Black Lives Matter is an important movement. We recognize it is very close to the Triodos values of human dignity. And I feel that there's a real new wave of particularly young people also who say this cannot happen anymore. We want to do that in a real social inclusive way. So that's a third sector where Triodos is really focusing on. And I feel also there Spain can have a leading role, but that's maybe for Michael to explain that. Thank you.
Yes, in line with Petar's words, in Spain, as you saw in the figures, when I explained where we have our exposure, we have a priority with renewable energies. We have a track record in big plants that have been built in Spain, but it is also true that right now we are focusing more and more on developing the democratization of production of power, and focusing a lot on self-consumption and commercialization of green energy. And we expect an important development there, hand in hand with the new Spanish legislation in the short term. As regards agriculture, as I mentioned in the presentation, we have also been working for several years, for 15 years, in order to support the big organic producers in Spain. But we also understand that it is high time that we transform the value chain of agriculture on commercialization of local producers and the different new ways to organize the value chain of agriculture that was so damaged in the last few decades. They need to establish new relations with nature, because we have seen that both from the point of view of the quality of water and also of the soil, we need to have a vision in the mid-term, because we are starting to perceive the consequences of the behavior that we have had up to now. And then regarding the sectors that they were asking in particular, we have seen that education is now the 5th sector in volume of activity at the bank, with an important commitment on our part, mainly in 2 lines. One is innovation and diversification in the education models in the education system in Spain, and on the other hand, in facilitating, to the extent possible, access to education for everyone. As regards electric mobility, it is true that it is not one of our priority sectors. It is neither a sector where we have a big exposure, and we have had funding experiences with models of shared mobility with electric vehicles. We have also carried out fleet change operations to electric fleets, but it is a sector that, given the point of view of the products that are normally leasing products that we do not operate, and also the mechanics or the dynamics of the sectors where the manufacturers themselves of the vehicles offer the funding, we don't see that there is a need for our presence, for our participation of the in the sector, or that we can make an important or a significant contribution in that sector in the short term, and that's why we don't have so much exposure. And then regarding the cultural sector, it is a sector where we are very much present. We have been there for many years. We are one of the main financiers of the sector. We have had a rapid and specific reaction both through ICO and with the SGR CREA program. We have been the first or the second sector that we were working with, and we keep up that commitment for the future, of course. Okay, so those were more or less the questions that we had grouped together, and now they are going to send me. I have received some questions of the ones that are being sent in real time. About the first one that I have is asking about the foundation and about the crowdfunding platform. What are the results? How is it working? Mainly for donations. I'm looking to you because that is up to you, I guess. Mikel. Well, last year we had around 800 donors in the crowdfunding platform and around 20 projects. It is just a question of starting to introduce the donation money to cater for needs that cannot be assumed by loans, and giving an option, an alternative to our customers and to the people who are close to the foundation in order to make a direct investment. We have focused from the beginning in the agriculture. We started with agriculture and education, and we won a award about organic farms. We offer incentives to create organic farms in schools, and we create structures in order to finance those farms. And we are developing the concept of social agriculture, because we see how we can work through agriculture in a more integrated development of our society. In that empty Spain, those empty areas of Spain, we need also to cater for them, and we are now working with the food industry. And as I said, we launched this year some donation campaigns for those organizations that needed to reinvent themselves during lockdown. And I believe this is an initiative that it has a long and brilliant future ahead of it. I don't think that we are going to overcome this situation through just borrowing more money, and we need to incorporate that money from debt, from donation, from capital, in order to make it more feasible for others to get out of this difficult situation. Now there is a question that has to do, I'm going to read it out literally, and you can answer, but any of you can answer. I think it doesn't matter. Although Triodos Bank is not investing or accepting money for the weapons industry, we could perhaps lend money to other banks that are investing in that. I think that people want just to have a confirmation that you are not investing in that through other banks. Peter?
No, we do not, because we have a very thorough process in assessing other banks, other places where we invest our money. And we are very selective on this item as well. So no, we don't do that. So I can reassure that.
I guess that's a very straightforward answer. Another question: before the pandemic, there seemed to be that society, there seemed to be a change in the mindset of society. It became fashionable to speak about sustainability, and people seem to promote that. Do you think that this fad, this trend, is going to continue, and that this will help economic recovery, or perhaps we will sacrifice some of those sectors because of this economic crisis and the consequences of the pandemic? Will it work? This one is for you, Peter.
Yeah, I think we believe strongly, and you can find a vision paper on our website on this theme, that reset the economy means for us we need to reactivate the economy, but in a certain direction. We don't want to go back to the old economy, what is also part creating the problems we are seeing now. And to be honest, I see Corona, although it's very bad what happened, as an almost as a rehearsal for the real big question, climate change, and what that will do to people. So in that sense, it's about now really accelerating the economy in the right direction. And I feel that the wake-up call of Corona really helped many people to see that we have to do it in a different way. And that's in a very positive mood, I must say, particularly under younger people. They don't see that as negative at all. They don't want to go back to the old. They want to go to the new. And that's what we can obtain a lot of hope from.
I would perhaps like to add that the institutional reaction, although at the beginning there seemed to be some doubts, the new plans of the European Union, the proposals of the European Commission, and also here in Spain, the fact that there's a draft bill on climate change that has been submitted to the Parliament just in the midst of this complex situation, I think that is a clear signal of the search for a way out of this situation through this new approach of sustainability. There is now a set of questions about the DR, the depository receipts. There was a person that said that he, due to problems with the computer, could not listen to Peter's presentation, and he wanted to know if you could repeat when the market will be reopened of the depository receipts, and why we made the unilateral decision to suspend trade, and whether we consider that is the right way to do it.
The reason we suspended trade, that we saw a pattern of more outflow than inflow, so we could see that the balance between that was not directing in the right way, and therefore we felt that with all the circumstances, COVID-19, what was happening, that we had to suspend trading for the time. And we are, of course, from day one, we were looking for the next moment that we could reopen again. Just very recently, and I hope you have received that email or that letter if you are a DR holder, we have now said we expect to reopen shortly after the 21st of August. Why the 21st of August? Then we are planning to publish our half-year figures, our audited half-year figures. And that's also the moment that the new prospectus is ready. So you have a very complete set of information, what should make it possible for new DR holders to come in, and also maybe for some DR holders who are considering to leave, to say, well, this is how the bank is doing. I cannot say much more about it. You will see it in the half-year figures. And I feel confident to continue my DR holdership. So that's the planning for the moment. It will be hopefully a couple of days after the 21st of August that we are open again.
Thank you, Peter. Again, about depository receipts. One question is, what strategic actions will be developed in order to consolidate and increase the value of the receipts, and whether that is going to be international or with specific actions by country, whether there are going to be specific actions for Spain. I guess that the first part is for Peter, and the second for you.
Yeah, the depository receipts have a very stable value development shown in the past. That has everything to do the way the value is calculated, the price is calculated. It's an intrinsic value. It's really a reflection of what we see as the value of the bank now. It's not dependent on market sentiments. That's a choice we made 40 years ago, and we still make that choice. And therefore, you will see a very stable development of this. And we expect that actually also for the future, although you can never do real predictions for the future. So there has to be some disclaimers for that. But so far, it has been a very, very stable development because of its approach, what is based on the intrinsic value, or as some people say, the net asset value of the bank reflected in the price of the DRs.
And as regards whether there were local actions in Spain, I would just like to add to what Peter said, that the DRs, the depository receipts, respond to the intrinsic value or the real value of the bank, which is a single one, not the value of the branch, neither the value of anything else, just the value of the bank as a whole. And that's part of that resilience and diversification of activity of the bank in the different countries where we are present, and it is the sum of all of them that gives a final value, and not the holders of the depository receipts in Spain. They are not receiving the value of the branch in Spain, but it is the same for all holders. They were asking as well whether there was something ready to make things easier for small holders to sell, whether there will be a possibility to open loans with guarantees for holders or something like that.
No, there is not a specific special treatment for small holders. There is a very basic principle that every DR holder has to be treated equally. And that's in the law, that's in the regulation. We cannot divert from that. So hopefully for small DR holders who have to sell, there is enough possibility in the future, but we cannot guarantee anything there. It's a real equal treatment principle.
Also for you, Peter, they are asking whether we are intending to extend the activity of the bank to Portugal, to the Portugal territory.
That question has come back several times to us in the past decades. Not for the moment, to be honestly. We have had questions from Portugal, but we really wanted to build the bank first in the countries we are present now, and we have no plans for Portugal.
Another question about depository receipts. They say that we've mentioned that after the quarterly result, the half-year results, we will be more clear about the reopening date. But they are asking, can we be more precise, and what will that depend on, the conditions of that reopening? What are the factors?
I can say the real hard date is that we have planned a meeting with our board on the 20th of August. What we can then announce that the half-year reports are present on the 21st. That is something what really has to happen. At the same time, we are working on approval from the prospectus in parallel, and we expect that after the 20th, 21st, also the prospectus is ready, and then we can open within a matter of days. There can always be a small issue with regulators or with small things we have to change. There we are a little bit cautious to say an exact date, but it is very likely that it will be after a few days, 1 or few days after the 21st of August. So very short after that date.
And now, changing the topic, they are asking, they read in a press release, and you said it as well, that we are working a lot with the cultural sector. And they ask whether that is not a big risk, a big threat, because the sector is going through really difficult times. Is that not too much of a threat? I believe that there are two different elements. In the sector itself, there are activities like, for example, production. Production continues to be very strong. Content is now stronger than a few years ago, and content production. And then there is another part of the activity that is suffering a loss, which is, for example, the physical space. The venues are having difficulties to continue their activity. And there we have looked for an agreement with those mutual guarantee society, and together with the Ministry of Culture, they have created a guarantee through which we can finance those sectors that have extraordinary liquidity needs with the guarantee or the backing of the government. So the greater degree of risk will entail a greater degree of guarantee on the part of the government. The challenge, of course, for everyone is that this is a sector where there are many micro entities, macro institutions, there are many freelancers, and of course giving loans is a challenge for everyone. Another question that I am going to read out literally, and I fear that the greenwashing scenario might dilute the scenario, and perhaps they will penalize banks that are investing in polluting projects. How do you assess that at this level, at an institutional level, to institutionalize this type of approach? Peter?
Well, we always have been saying to regulators, European Commission, that it's great to favor green investments, but that it's maybe even better to punish brown investments. And that was, of course, not very appreciated by our colleague banks. But step by step in the past years, the regulators, and particularly the European Parliament, started to think about it. It's not yet regulation, but I expect in the coming years that you have to have more capital as a bank, if you invest in so-called brown assets. And that will help the transition to a greener economy. Because in the end, capital is expensive for banks, and therefore they want to use it more effectively and want to move more from brown to green. So this is a real change finance measure where we have been lobbying for, against, I would say, all the other trends. But I'm very proud of it that it starts now to receive much more recognition and also making sense to a lot of regulators. And hopefully also to our colleague banks, if they start to see that it also brings them, their bank, into a much safer environment, literally.
Yes, perhaps I would just like to add 2 comments. Yes, of course, that's a path. It does not mean that it is a path right now, and it wasn't a path just some years ago. We are just taking steps in one direction, and we have taken steps in terms of regulation. And they were at the beginning only regulating green products, and so the activity of the most polluting banks was not visible. And now they are considering the possibility of regulating the totality of the portfolio of banks in order for us to see how much was green and how much was brown. And that battle, that struggle has ended in looking at everything. We are not just regulating the green area, we are looking at everything to see the balance. And that's a symptom that it is going to be more difficult to find a path for greenwashing and leaving the reality aside. Then we also have the agreement for climate of the financial sector in Spain, the COP25, where there's an agreement and a commitment to publish data about impact and about goals. It is true that it is quite an open agreement, but it is also true that the mere existence of that concept of being and of that commitment of being transparent is helping the society and the stakeholders to be able to demand from the banks more robust steps towards sustainability and transparency. And so the financial sector, if they have to publish their goals, that's also a signal that there will be ups and downs, but that's a path that is here to stay, and that I'm sure is going to be the future. I share that concern that the pace of change has to be fast, because we cannot wait any longer, and it is the responsibility of everyone, the public institutions, the managers of the infrastructures, and also of the citizens and the society. We have to demand that the rules that are implemented are respected. No, it is not just compliance or just looking for loopholes. They are also asking for an investor. How could you explain to an investor what's the difference between depository receipts and the investment funds? What is the difference when it comes to investing from an investor perspective between the two?
I think if you invest in an investment fund, and that investment fund is investing in listed companies, then you are investing in general in a much more liquid situation. It's very simple. If you want to get your money out of an investment fund, that investment manager can simply sell some of the stock on the stock market and pay you back your investment. With Triodos Bank, with depository receipts, you actually invest in a company, in a real organism where you are directly related to, and we are using that capital you have invested in us to grant loans almost 10 times what you have done. We can apply savings, as I said earlier, so that money is less liquid and is not so easy to withdraw. We have created this small market, this small trading possibility, but that's very limited, also from a regulatory perspective. And therefore, it's a different sort of investment. It's a long-term investment. It's a mission investment. And yes, we try to provide you with a good dividend. And we did in the last 33 years, not this year for reasons I mentioned. But that's a different type of investment. It's more a capital investment, and the other is more a market investment. And I would say that difference is very important if you consider to do the one or the other.
Another question about depository receipts. They are asking about the reason why they lowered the price €1 of the depository receipt with the market closed. Why they did that?
What you always can see with the depository receipts, that in perspective of the risk we see, we have to take certain provisions. In banking, and it's a very complicated thing how that works, is IFRS. You also have to have a forward-looking estimation of what you believe that's going to happen on your provisions on loans. And part of that is also reflected in the price of the net asset value, and therefore in the price of the DRs. And this is one of the reasons why there is a very small decrease in the price of the depository receipts.
And we have another question about depository receipts. And they say, not always we need to purchase. Now, on the occasion of the crisis, we needed liquidity and we needed to sell depository receipts. What would you say to those people that sense that you turn your back on them?
Yeah, we absolutely don't want to turn our back to them. That is, but it is unfortunately also the case that, as I said in my previous answer to the previous question, that it's not for a bank who need that capital to help all the borrowers to borrow money from the bank. We cannot easily withdraw that from the business and give it back to the investors. That is why this is an illiquid investment. So within the boundaries of regulation, within the possibility of more money coming in and use that also to facilitate outflow, people want to sell, we try to service them as good as we can, but we definitely not turn our back to them. We try to do what we can within the limited possibilities we have there.
Thank you. Another one, and I think that the next will be different. But this one, what do you use the money for, the money that you obtain from the non-distribution of dividend?
That money is, yes, we did not use the dividend. That is part of the capital of the bank. So that is part of the net asset value of the bank. So that really helped also to maintain a certain level of the net asset value price. So in that sense, it's not gone. It is within the bank. It's part of the capital. It's not distributed.
And now a different topic. The question is, do we intend to launch any type of personal loan for the purchase of electric vehicle, for example, or some personal loan that adapts to our needs? Some other conventional banks are doing it. Do we have something in mind for that? Well, we have available to our customers a personal loan as long as that personal loan is used for activities such as this one, for example, for a triodos mortgage for a dwelling, for a housing, and then the loan, personal loan for education and some sustainable investments. We have loans for that already. I'm going to read this one out. Are you active in developing countries through microcredits? Are you present, Peter?
Yes, absolutely. I mentioned that we are in more than 100 microfinance institutions in, I think it's about 50 countries. So we're very active in those countries. And I just can say that COVID-19 has hit Europe a lot, particularly also Spain. But I'm very worried about those people in those emerging markets where there are no strong governments who can support people. And they will particularly also be hit, first of all, in health, but also economically. So we really have to help those people through this crisis as well. And that's quite a responsibility.
And one question, I think this one is for you, Mikel. What growth prospects do you expect in the renewable energy sector in the immediate future? Well, we expect an important growth, a substantial growth. Both the plans of the government and also the needs imposed by the ecological transition are speaking about growth of renewables in the next 8 years, which is quite significant. We have been financing renewables for 17 years in Spain, and we are very active in that sector. What I believe is more important is to start to see that double way of intervening in the sector, both to provide those big infrastructures for big plants where we are active and we want to continue being active with other financial institutions, but at the same time also the development of that more distributed network of both production and commercialization, where the goal is not so much the growth but the diversification and the resilience. If we have learned something in this situation is that we need to develop a balance of those two elements, and for three of those right now we have to take a step forward in that second dimension where solutions are not working so effectively right now. This question can be for any of you. Is it realistic And your purpose on measuring emissions with tools such as pickup at times like these ones, where it seems that we have to look into more immediate priorities.
Sorry, you have to repeat the question. It wasn't completely clear.
Sorry, I speak very fast. And this person says, do you consider realistic that focus on measuring emissions with tools such as pickup at moments like this where things are so difficult?
Yeah, I believe this is exactly the moment to speak up as a Triodos Bank with the values and the mission we have. And I feel that we were a little bit cautious in the beginning of the crisis, where we felt every focus should be on the health situation of people, including our own co-workers. But now we are moving to a situation where people start to think about a situation after Corona. There is a lot of demand for IDs, and we have those IDs. We have 40 years of experience in front-running sustainable business, and we have IDs. That combination makes us a very strong player. So that's why we want to bring this message across, reset the economy, make a more sustainable and fair economy.
This question is for Mikkel. And they say that we have financed elderly homes before the pandemic, and they are asking whether we are going to redouble our efforts in this area in order to prevent what has happened from happening again. Yeah, in that sector, in the old people's homes, we are very much focused on the short-term answer, in the short-term reaction. We had a meeting this morning with one of the persons in charge of one of those old people's homes, and they were telling us that they were rethinking everything in the sector, whether they needed to find a system was more effective for situations such as this one, and to have a direct connection with hospitals in order to institutionalize people faster and more easily. But there's still a big difference in the different approaches, and they don't know how they are going to solve the situation. But of course, we will be present. We will, for the time being, we are going to solve the short-term problems, and then we will start thinking about where should we head for in terms of taking care of the elderly people. This question, I think it is for Peter. They are asking about the assessment about the European taxonomy that was passed recently, and what the role of Triodos is going to be in Europe in order to have an impact on the regulation of sustainable finance.
Yeah, we think we have been contributing to the process in coming to this taxonomy, this new green taxonomy. We think it's important. It avoids greenwashing. If you want to claim that you are a green investment fund, particularly it's for investment funds, then you have to prove that you are. So we are very much in favor of that. By the way, Triodos investment funds go far beyond what is asked from investment funds in this taxonomy, but we find it's a solid base and it really excludes greenwashing. So I think it's an important step and an important development in the European realm, and I hope it will go further. Not only about green, it will also be about social. We try to bring that in, and as I mentioned earlier, part of the taxonomy should also be extended to the non-green part of investment funds. So people also reveal where there are still in brown assets. So it's an important step, and Triodos really supports it with its knowledge and experience, and we are regularly consulted about developments and new ideas.
And now they are asking about the regulation in Spain. They ask for an assessment about the text, the draft bill on climate change, what we already know. And at the same time, this is another question about the Royal Decree Law for support of renewable energies and the auctions. Well, I believe that the draft bill sets some global goals that are quite ambitious, that carbon neutrality for 2050 and the need to cut down emissions by 20% for 2030. I think that's a reference framework for us, which is sufficiently solid and clear to start working. Of course, it is also true that in the law, they look for a distribution of the impact among the different sectors, and our perspective there is that there is a level of accuracy and of efficiency in some sectors, such as, for example, mobility and energy production, but there are other sectors, like, for example, agriculture, where we believe that we can be more specific, that they could be more specific, and that being more specific would help the transition be faster and more orderly. But above all, our main question, our main proposal to improve that draft bill would have to do with the goals that are set for the financial sector. They should include among the reporting obligation what we call the REACH 3, the scope 3 of the carbon emissions of the financial sector. Just to explain it briefly, the scope 1 and 2 are the scopes that have to do with the consumption, your own consumption of the organization, and the scope 3 has to do with the value chain of suppliers and customers that you have and their emissions. In the financial sector, 1% more or less of the emissions are scope 1 and 2, but the majority, the greatest part of emissions are those that are generated through our portfolio of investments. And for the time being, in the draft bill, they just demand from the banks to disclose their emissions in scope 1 and 2. And we understand that in order to have a reliable overview of the impact of a financial institution, scope 3 should also be included, and that's our suggestion, our recommendation. They are asking also now for an assessment about the commitment that was signed by the banks at the COP25. They are asking whether we really believe that the other banks have the capacity to abide by that commitment, to really to fulfill those obligations, and what should we do in order to promote the compliance with that agreement, with that commitment. Well, I believe that the challenge of the situation that we have ahead of us regarding climate change and inequalities is so huge that nobody really denies it right now. We all agree that we require the participation of administrations, of governments, of citizens, and of companies and the financial sector. And within the financial sector, we all have to be part of that transition. And I believe that this is a fundamental element, and not just the growth of triodos will make change possible. We all need to contribute, and for me it is very positive that we are all there and willing to contribute. And of course, then there will be differences, as Peter said, about our role. We are front runners and we are leading that transformation of finance. And that can really be a good example for others to show to other institutions and to the regulators that a different type of banking is possible, and to become more or less like a driver for the rest of the institutions to come after us. The fact that PICAP is publishing the footprint, the carbon footprint, tells us that it is possible to measure the carbon footprints of banks and financial institutions. So it is possible, and if the customers and the citizens and the governments demand it, the banks will do it in the end. So two different places where our bank can play a role in the transition of the whole society, and there is a huge interdependence. Now they are asking, in these times of crisis, do you intend or do you expect an increase in fees, perhaps? Well, I believe that the experience that we have about the way out of the previous crisis and the expectations of regulatory costs and the costs of that new role of custodians of the or prevention of money laundering have made it very clear that the financial sector is going to increase in complexity, and of course it will entail more cost. And on top of that, we have to invest in digitalization. So depending on how things are orchestrated, the need for greater regulation, the development of digitalization and everything, and it could be possible to that there will be changes in fees. But right now, we don't have any specific forecast. But I think that the observation of the crisis situation, the interest rates, the negative interest rates, regulatory costs, and digitalization force us to not being able to give a clear vision of what is going to happen in the future, in the near future. Okay, they are now asking the colleagues here. I don't know if they are referring to Spain or to the whole world. How is the Triodos Bank staff working right now? Now that the difficult circumstances have come to an end, how are they working? And are you taking care of your co-workers still, or?
Of course, we're taking care of our co-workers. They are a very important force for change, force for our customers. So that was the first thing I was mentioning. And the situation is so, at least in the Netherlands, but I think also in Spain, that most people still working from home, also in line with government regulation. But step by step, we hope that we can come back to the office and see if that's possible within the regulation, but taking a cautious approach there. So I hope that at a certain moment we can see each other again in life, in real life, and hopefully this will not last for many more months. At the same time, I have to say that the experience with working from home and more digital conferences like we have now with the R holders has also enabled us to experience the positive sides of that way of communicating. So part of that will stay, but I definitely think that more people are looking forward to see their colleagues in real life again. Me too, by the way.
Yes. Today we have around 10 or 12 co-workers from the bank. We hadn't seen each other for a few months, and we are going to take advantage of the opportunity to, of course, keeping the distance, to have a drink together. But as Petra said, here in Spain, we are still, the majority of the organization is still working from home, except in the branch network, where from Monday, from this Monday, there is a greater degree of activity. Retail businesses are starting to open, and there are more visits to the offices, and there are more or less half of the staff is already working at the office. So in the commercial, the sales network, they are closer to the customer, and of course they have progressed further in that development, but of course with the precautionary measures, and we will continue like this until September. We have a question that is international. How do we assess the level of solidarity in Europe in this context of the pandemic, and to what extent a bank such as ours can contribute to that, to increasing that solidarity?
I can speak for the bank, and I think we feel very much one bank, one community, and it's not even a question for us that solidarity within the group is present, and we enjoy the richness of being a European bank. And maybe for some people in Europe and politicians, we could be an example how you deal with a European ideal as we do in Triodos.
And now this one is for you, Mikel. They say that it is fundamental to educate young people in sustainability? When are we going to have actions or accounts specific for young people? You mean accounts and any kind of action, action for just specific for young people? Well, I believe that in the last few years there were programs for financial education. Since the last crisis, there are programs that focus on providing technical and financial information and offering training in those topics, and we are now reconsidering how we can help those young people to look into economy, not just from the financial and technical part, but also from the meaning of economy for the coexistence of people, and what is the impact of our decisions, of our economic decisions. We right now do not have anything specific, but this is an idea that we are now developing, but this is not just something that we are considering. Some of our customers are demanding that from us more and more. And as regards products for young people, it is also true that we are receiving demands for young people focused products, and those are of course digital products. The answer or the proposal that we have on the table right now is quite absolutely valid proposal for young people, because they are the ones that are demanding transparency the most. They are demanding to know where money is being invested, and the effort that they are asking from us has to do more with cutting down fees. And right now we have a product with fees that we understand could become part of that financial education and that fair price product that we were discussing. Not just products because of not the fact that they are for free, that does not necessarily mean that they are good products. And to the extent that we will try to adapt to the situation of those people and those in more vulnerable situations, and that's why we have products for more vulnerable groups of population with different rates, and that's something we also are implementing. They say that responsible consumption is important for the bank. Do you intend to have some collaboration with the Ministry of Consumption in order to promote ethical banking a little bit more in Spain, such as they did in Italy, for example? Yes, I don't know if it is up to the Ministry of Consumption. It is more with the financial regulation, I think, that demand that every financial product should come not just with the risk information, that traffic light information about levels of risk and so on, to be more transparent with products. I think that we should not just incorporate that information about transparency in terms of risks, but also transparency about their impact, and to have a regulation and an information that allows people to make decisions based on the knowledge of the impact of that product, of that financial product. I think that is a very important element. And then another thing that I think is important, and it is an opportunity that we have right now, is to make finance to the extent possible to be leveraged in citizenship. The protection of consumers now have caused that some high impact financial products are not available for every citizen, and I think that those impact products where there is a greater demand is normally the demand is to make complex products only available for some people, for professional investors, and not for the citizens. I think that's a clear example. Those microfinance funds that Peter was mentioning that are available for everyone in the Netherlands, those funds in Spain, by law, can only be commercialized for professional investors. That's a reconsideration of the regulation, not just because of customer or consumer protection, but also because of information in terms of impact and also accessibility to citizens for those high impact products. Another question, they are saying that they know that in some countries the bank is charging negative interest rates to some customers, even to retail customers. Is that going to happen in Spain? Well, as you all know, and that's something I mentioned in the presentation, the European Central Bank interest rates are at minus 0.5. That's an interest rate that has repercussions for us because of the deposits that we have, because of the liquidity reserves that we have at the European Central Bank. Our job is to optimize to the extent possible the funds entrusted to make them enough to be able to finance the social entrepreneurship. And that's what we are working on, and we are trying to keep the balance that we have right now. We are charging negative interest rates to those institutions that have big savings with the bank, and we are regulating with those negative interest rates. We are regulating the volume of funds entrusted. But it is true that there are some countries, like for example the Netherlands, where they are already applying negative interest rates for all those customers with a balance of more than 100,000 euros, the same as they are doing in Germany, for example. And they ask also whether it is possible to open an account from Spain, to open an account in Triodos Bank in Germany or the Netherlands, and if it is possible, whether there's some limitation in the amount or something. But normally, I would have to check that, to double check. In order to open up an account, you need to have a residence in that country. So if you are not a resident of the Netherlands, the justification would make it difficult, really. But anyway, I would have to double check that. And if someone wants that information with a little bit more detail, you can call us or send an email to that address, and we will confirm that. I was looking at my colleagues whether someone would reassure me. Yeah, that's what they say, that if you don't have a residence, it's going to be difficult. Now we have a couple of questions that are more or less the same, and they are asking, they say they would like us, as investors, they would like to know what part of the budget of the bank is invested in advertising campaigns or communication campaigns for the bank to be better well known, to have more customers or investors, so that we can have more capital to finance more entrepreneurs with an impact.
I'm sorry, I don't know the percentage by heart, but we have a fair and balanced budget for marketing. What we try to do is not the traditional selling marketing, but inform people much more about what the vision of the bank is, the values of the bank. So we have now also in Spain a nice movie about the change after Corona, and that attracts many more interest than just a flat selling campaign. So we do that in a Triodos way, full of content, full of mission, and appealing to those people who really feel connected to value-based banking.
And here there's a question. I don't know if it's personal for the two of you, for each of you. How did you experience? How did you adapt, both of you, to I guess that in terms of work and in your functions in these times of pandemic? How did you adapt? How did you manage?
I think what gives energy is the way my colleagues are taking this whole as a real positive challenge and make the best out of it. That is really inspiring. At the same time, I must admit that I find it pretty tiring to sit almost a full day and more than a full day behind the screen and have Zoom calls or team calls. That is something what takes more energy. So there is a balance. And I seriously hope that I can meet also people in person again to get a more balanced life in that sense. So positive, but also some constraints on the way you have to deal with digital communication as we have to do now.
On the one hand, I feel privileged to some extent because I feel useful, and in situations such as this, being helpful and being useful makes you happier. And we were able to share that feeling and that activity with lots of people. We saw how efficient and how effective our help could be, and that is a source of pride, really, and it is very much rewarding. And on the other hand, I'm a father of 3 children, 8, 5, and 3 years, and they were not attending school. And that digital part, the intensity of all the changes that had to take place in these last few months, and also trying to make things as best as possible at home, have required a big or a great degree of intensity. And so I'm willing to take a break. Not just myself, everyone. There is anxiety in the background. There's an accumulation of responsibilities. It is really difficult to distinguish Monday from Sunday, and day and night. We are all looking forward to our holidays, as long as we can leave things ready. We still have some work to do before that. And now this question is for Peter. They are asking, why is Triodos not extending to other countries, even outside of Europe, convinced that we are a necessary type of banking, and they wish us strength and success?
Yeah, no, I understand the question. And 2 things. There is quite a constraint from a regulatory point of view to open a new branch. I think the time we opened a branch in Spain, where Mikel was already there, it was relatively easy to get that through the regulatory authorities. Today, it's much more complicated, and you cannot start with 5 or 6 people. You have to start almost with 40, 50 people. So there are quite some startup costs involved, and we have to admit the profitability of the bank is, for regulatory cost reasons, but also low interest margins, is more under pressure. So that's one thing. But we found a positive solution for that. We have been the founder of the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. And that organization has been established in 2009 and now has more than 60 members worldwide. And we consider them as our expansion outside Europe. There are quite a few in Europe as well, but also outside Europe. And we share the same values, as the word said already, the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. And it's a fascinating organization with fantastic banks. And we feel that that is the way we are working outside Europe, outside Triodos, in a very effective way. So more an horizontal expansion than an expansion of Triodos as such.
Well, I think I'm going to ask the last question because we are about to finish. They are asking whether we intend to be able to pay with a Triodos card through service like Wallet, Apple Wallet, or similar services in the near future. Well, I go back again to what I said about Visum. I hope that shortly we will be able to develop digital payment methods, as long as we see that it is a solution that has the ability to provide service to the different range of payment formats. Visum offers coverage for some situations. Some other payment methods generate conflicts with our privacy policy about the use of data. And in the end, integrating technology, privacy in the use of data, and the volume of investment that we require, that's a combination that we have to finalize, and we hope that we can do it soon. But for the time being, we are reasonably comfortable with the payment methods that we have, because we consider they are enough. Okay, thank you very much, Peter and Mikel, for your answers, and to all of you for your questions and for your contributions. I think that it has been a great conversation. We are going to close on time because it's always important, but more so in this type of meeting. This year we won't be able to have a talk afterwards, but I believe this has been a very valuable and useful conversation. We have exchanged opinions and we have clarified many things. Before we close, I would like to say that in several days you will receive a survey to assess this meeting, and you will have access a link to access the video for those people that could not attend. So that's all. We hope we can meet again next year. Let's hope that some of us at least will be face to face, and that's all. Thank you very much and see you soon. Thank you.